Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Filmageddon podcast. My name is Frank Soldado, aka the Quizmaster, as some people have known me over the years, and I'm joined by two of my very best compadres in the form of both Adam Grundy and Blair Tracy. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Frank. Thank you for having me back once again. It's lovely to speak to you and to you, Blair.
Yes, thank you. It's good to be back to, talk again.
This is a few weeks on the trot. We're doing well here with our little comeback, our 2019 comeback, and we've got a good one today because we are jumping right on that bandwagon. It was the end of probably one of the biggest television series of all time this very week, and we would be remiss if we didn't discuss a little bit about our thoughts for the final season of Game of Thrones. And luckily, we've got three of the biggest throne heads there are. Isn't that right, guys?
Yeah.
Yes, I love Game of Thrones. I have in-depth knowledge, insight, facts, and stats as well. I'll be bringing you stats the entire night.
I'm excited. You could tell there is a lot of genuine emotions in what the guys are saying, especially Adam. So let's get right into it, guys. Last season of Game of Thrones. It's 8 seasons of a show. It's 10 years. A lot of time's been invested. This has been the big final season here. Only 6 episodes, but the episodes were going to be longer. There's going to tie up all the plot lines. It was going to do everything all the fans wanted. So it brings us up to this past Sunday/Monday, depending where you are. What did you guys think of the first sort of 5 episodes of this season? Was it going the way you wanted? Like, were you excited? Did all 5 of the episodes get you going? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was fucking dying with excitement before the episode started, and during the episode, I think it's just a lot of, like, you sort of knew, just seeing it felt a bit surreal. You were like, okay, now this is the end. So it sort of was, I was mixed between, like, sort of feeling that I had to be excited, and then there was a weird sense of, like, almost like duty, like I need to see just to the end, just show me the end. Do you know what I mean? Which is a bit of a weird selfish way to think about it, but I was like, once you're being told, like, there's literally nearly 8 hours left, with every moment you're sort of reviewing it, like, oh wait, so if that happened, then maybe this will mean that something's going to happen with that in 10 minutes, and it sort of took me out of it a bit, if I'm being honest.
There was a sense of constant, for me anyway, like this sense of constant clock watching of, like, from when episode 1 started, you had I think they released, like, the running times for all 6 episodes just before the season started. And, like, if somebody was walking slowly down a hallway, I was like, well, there goes 2 minutes from whatever the 6 or 7 hours there are. Like, that's taking away time that we could be getting answers or seeing something cool. And I think that hung over me for most of the season, especially the last episode.
Oh, definitely.
But I think, the 5 episodes themselves in the lead up were obviously, they've been met with a bit of a mixed reaction. People... and even the last season had this as well, which is that sense of speeding up the plot. Like, people travel a lot quicker. Things are just happening quicker. It used to take a character 1 season to get from King's Landing to Winterfell, but now all of a sudden they're doing it in half an episode.
Yeah.
But with those complaints aside, I think, like, I'm not upset in any way that the pace of the show's been sped up, because it's been such a long, drawn-out process that it felt like a natural evolution, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of, I don't know how you could have done it without it being, like, 14 series long, because if you have, like, 20 to 30 main characters, like, you can't, it's not like Breaking Bad, where you basically just want to see whether or not Walter White's going to get away with it. Do you know what I mean? There's a point in a character development, but whenever it's people guessing who's going to be on the Iron Throne, and all this, it sort of, you can't keep the same pace because, like you say, at some point you've got to just wrap it up. And I mean, I don't think it was done in the, I don't think it was done in the best way. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, but I don't think it was done in such a horrific way that people are complaining about.
Yeah, I think like it did. It was too quick for its own good at times, but like I can remember some of those middle seasons, which were some of the best seasons, obviously. But you know, sometimes you'd watch an episode, and an episode would run anywhere between 45 and 55 minutes, and within that amount of time, because there are so many characters in so many different places, you'd get 5 minutes of storyline for like 10 characters, and you'd feel like after an hour, yeah, some cool stuff happened, there were some developments, but at the same time, you're almost like, taking it back to each character's story, there really wasn't a lot of movement.
Yeah.
And I've sort of enjoyed all the characters coming together over the last 2 seasons, and I've enjoyed things not being so mundane anymore. Like, how many times do we need to see Jon Snow walking in the north, to get from Castle Black to wherever?
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, oh, okay, Gendry, he ran from the wall to wherever they were fighting the White Walkers in that one episode in like 20 minutes.
They might have just found a different route. Maybe
exactly.
There's
Maybe
a different road, and no one.
They got a subway or something.
Exactly. But do you know what I think? What I would compare it to, right? So I think it's sort of like, whenever you were in school and you had a summer holiday, right?
Yeah.
And then you were off for like, let's say 8 weeks, and in the first 4 weeks you were like, this is never going to end. I'm having the most fun ever. I have little regard for, anything. I'm just free. I'm digging a hole in the garden even though I'm 16. No one needs to know. But then whenever it gets to like the last week, you're like, holy shit, I've only got a week left to enjoy myself. I got to cram it all in. And then whenever you feel like you're not enjoying yourself enough, it sort of makes you feel like you're not having fun at all, even though in any other context you would have been having fun. But
that's a perfect explanation, because it's that fact of like every second in this last season where something that you thought should have been happening wasn't happening, it felt like a wasted moment. And it really does sort of affect a bit of the enjoyment. Like, and don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the episodes leading up to the finale a fairly decent amount, probably more than most people from what I'm reading online. But there was that sort of, okay, come on, move along. This has to happen, and it has to happen now. I mean, what were your thoughts on it, Adam? Those apps.
So, I mean, I thought that Daenerys, who is a character in Game of Thrones, I think that what she did was bad, or good, depending on if she was a likable character. I thought that Jon Snow, the reveal was very revealing. I thought that Gwendolyn Christie is a very tall woman.
Oh.
But I thought this season she's had a lot to work with. I think she got her just desserts. We'll say that.
All right. So
yeah, I just thought it was an adventure, and I think
Adam, obviously, not really having watched it, can you try and sort of reverse engineer through what you know and the outcry from like the people on the internet? Do you think you could tell me how it ended?
Okay, so I know how it ended. It ended with loads of people on fire, and that's all I know so far. I've seen the first episode, which I was like, oh, everyone's saying this is good. I'll watch the first episode. Oh, everyone sounds like they're from where I'm from. This is nice. And then there's the little blonde boy is in it, and no one likes him. And then I got to the end of the episode, and I was like, I can't be arsed with this shit. Never mind. And then, like, whatever, 8 years later, everyone's still buzzing about it. I assumed that the blonde one, that's Daenerys. She's now bad, and she has her dragon that was... So basically, my girlfriend's always, like, watched it, and I've always kind of been in the room while she's doing it, and I'm like... that girl's got a dragon now, and then which is called Drogon or something. Like, who the fuck wrote that? Like, that is dumb. Did they ever address like, this is the dumbest name I've ever come up with for a fucking dragon? hello, Dig the dog. It's bullshit. Like, no, I can understand. Okay, so I think from an outsider's point of view or an outsider's perspective is that like, it's kind of comes it comes across as like what we spoke about with film franchises. You know, if you imagine how long this series is running, that's 8, 9 years. When did it start? It was
about 10 years. So it's been running basically nearly as long as the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
So that's it must be part of it, is that like, well, I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of people who've read the books up, because obviously didn't the series kind of divert from the books at a certain point a few years ago, and then it kind of becomes a thing of like, well, have they done this in the book? Have they done that in the book? Kind of like with The Walking Dead. I was one of those people who followed The Walking Dead closely. I'd read some of the books, and you start, when you're watching the show, you're like, hey, this doesn't fucking make any sense. From what I've understand, the Game of Thrones kind of followed the source material a lot closer, mainly because it seemed like there was better writing. And then, it's gone off on its own thing. I guess people are kind of sad because if it was like a film franchise, it's not how they would have had it ended. I don't know. Are there characters that you guys think that should have had more justice in their final scenes? Or, like, you're talking about, like, time-wise, if you've only got finite amount of time left in the season, do you think there are certain characters that could have been pimped up a bit more, for lack of a better term?
Absolutely. Like, I think the two big ones that I was most annoyed about, that I think were really, like they could have made it more interesting without really losing any time. I think Cersei dying without, like, I wanted her to get, like, blood, like, beheaded, like, cut to pieces, eaten, shit out. Like, I wanted her to die a horrible, horrible death. But she sort of she gets killed under rubble with fucking Jaime, which was, I felt like, like we were saying before, it was a lot of like, whenever that happened, I was like, nah, she can't be dead. She'll get up in the next episode. But then I remembered, oh no, there's like 20 minutes left, so she's probably dead. So I thought what I wanted to happen with her was probably, well, no, actually, what I wanted to happen to Daenerys, because she sort of gets a really, like, a very Hollywood death. Like, it's a bit Shakespearean, like, as they're embracing, he slips the knife in and kills her. But I wanted it to be a bit more interesting. Like, it was too obvious. Like, for Jon to kill her, it was like, well, okay. But I wanted it to be something like Arya killing her, because Arya used to be able to wear people's faces and, like, sneak about and shit, but she didn't get to use it. I wanted her to steal Jon's face and then kill Daenerys. Or steal someone's face, at least. Do some cool shit.
Steal the dragon's face, then you get fire powers.
Yeah, but
that's not how it works, Adam.
And then I think...
and as someone who's watched so much of the show, you should know that.
But they were my two main ones. I wanted there to be not as a linear way for Daenerys to die, and I wanted there to be a much, much bloodier death for Cersei. What about you?
I think Cersei, the way Cersei died was sort of like, I was fine with it, because for me in that moment it was more about Jaime anyway. Like, I'm more disappointed, if anything, that Cersei had nothing to do the rest of the season. Like, I think she was getting paid $1 million an episode to just drink wine on her balcony for the most part. Whereas, like, in the past, she's actually proven to be quite like a tactician and smart and ruthless and all this sort of stuff. This season, it all sort of came crumbling down underneath her. Even that one episode where there was like, oh, she's invited all the peasants into the Red Keep. That's her strategy, to use them as a human shield. And then you almost expect, once shit starts hitting the fan with Drogon the Dragon, that that maybe she's got another plan. And like there's all these little hints as well. Like, you see some of like the wildfire kicking up under the city and everything, and you're like, oh, is that going to come into play? And then literally, and maybe that was in a roundabout way, a way of defeating Cersei, like defeating the idea of Cersei as opposed to straight up like brutally murdering her. The audience gets to see her fail and all her plans come crumbling apart in ways that we're not used to, because normally she tends to get her way, apart from, all her kids dying and all that sort of bad stuff.
That's true, actually.
I think character-wise, like anyone else who got a short end of the stick, I mean, Jorah, after coming back basically from like a death sentence a season or two ago, really didn't do much at all. Like, he was Jorah, so he was cool when he was there. I mean, Theon, like, I don't like what they did with Theon. Like, I don't like how they spent a few seasons trying to make him a character people cared about again. And, I know some people did, but, like, ever since Theon did what he did a few seasons back, I've always wanted him to die, even when he was, like, the pathetic little worm guy.
Reek.
And, yeah, well, like, I've never felt sorry for Theon since then. I've never felt sorry. Like, when people cross characters that I like in the show, I get really angry and I don't forgive them. Like, I've wanted Arya to die since she betrayed the Hound and left him to die. Like, I've never thought, like, all that stuff with the face stealing, I was like, I don't care. I hope she bites it in the end. There's nothing I like about her character anymore. And which made that moment with the Hound in the last episode that much more emotional for me. Like, when she said thank you to the Hound, I had to like do like a double take, deep breath, like no, okay, maintain.
Yeah.
But on the reverse side, I think if we could talk characters who got some pretty good stuff out of it, the Hound could have been a VIP those last two episodes,
Right.
Even though they were playing him off to be a bit of a wimp in the Battle of Winterfell one.
Yeah, I quite liked. I mean, it's sort of the logical conclusion. I think his followed the best arc of like redemption, and he died the way he sort of had to die, fighting his, zombie brother. And
Yeah.
that's he. Yeah, you remember.
Yeah, it's your favorite part of the show.
Remember?
Yeah, he wore the face with and Tyrion Lannister. He wore the face, and everyone was like, "Why, Jon Snow? Why are you bending down?" And
That's true.
That is all accurate to a T, as always.
Yeah, but here's a question: what about so? Do you think that they always thought that Bran was gonna sort of be the winner of it, quote unquote? Because it feels
as in like the writers.
Yes. So from the part that it deviates from the books, I think the story is meant to be that Bran. I don't think Bran's meant to be the leader, and I know the whole spiel of like he has the stories, and we don't need, this is how people will. It won't be passed down through, families anymore. All this shit, but I always felt like he was meant to be like the chronicler away from it. That's why he was like dehumanized, and he was made into almost just like an almanac that had, flew about and could control things. But to make it that then he can see see through people's eyes and witness everything, and then it ends up that he wins. It sort of makes him it sort of really taints his arc for me, because did he basically do it all from getting pushed out of the window by Jaime in the first series to right then? Did he orchestrate all of it? Do you know what I mean?
It is a bit confusing. It's a nonsensical thing in a nonsensical show, really. But like, I think I'm under the impression that like, ever since when he first sort of met the kids, the wildlings, and learned that he could warg, and then the three-eyed raven was always sort of, oh god, yeah, no, even just saying it out loud, I'm confusing myself, because if the three-eyed raven was contacting him, but he was the three-eyed raven, then he's setting it all up. You know what? Doesn't make any sense. But I wonder if it's gonna change it all for the books, because I think he's got to come out with two more books. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's deviated wildly from it. I think that.
Well, it's deviated a bit, but George R.R. Martin did tell them how his books were going to end, and that's what they wrote this off of. So That's why I would think, unless he really takes a lot of this critical stuff to heart, it probably still be Bran in the books as well.
Yeah, I mean, but I think I guess it's the difference in the tempo of it, because it's like, all right, we all wrap it up, and then Tyrion, you come out, and then you just convince everybody that all the fighting was not worth anything, and little kid in the wheelchair will do it. All right, cool. And then he does it. I think the whole idea was that Daenerys in the TV show's always been, very everyone's felt sorry for her, and you've sort of been like, oh, very forgiving of her. But there's always been a bit of a madness to her, which I think is sort of ignored, probably because Emilia Clarke is so attractive. And I don't even mean that as a joke. Like, if you look at her, you're like, I would forgive her. Like, she could fucking, she could hit me with her car, and I'd be like, you know what? I'm sure you didn't mean to. Or like, But
you think like people underestimate her because there's like of a sort of like, and they've done well with like the casting.
Well, I think they've done well with the casting, and I think she is a good actress. But I think the fact is that it's hard to show subtle signs of like craziness, like because she's meant to like devolve into madness, basically, like her, like what her family does. But then it just in the show, she's always the one, like, she does some bad shit, but it's always very forgiving to her. Everyone, like, even the tone of everything, it's like, well, she had to do it, she had to kill all those people, and she had to do this. But then in the last few episodes, it's like, oh no, now she's crazy, but
yeah, that's like she did. She's basically destroyed populations before, and because it was all in the name of liberating like a group of people, like slaves or whatever, it's always been seen as, and then obviously you get the epic music that's all like cheerful, like, oh, it's like, oh yeah, she's the goodie, she's not the baddie, she's gonna do well. And then in this in the 5th episode of this last season, like, they actually just show her when she's sort of snapped, and it's like, well, now she's got like a crazy eye twitch and everything. It's like, oh, now I get it. Now she's bad. Because, like, I think that's one of those problems of like the sped up pace of the last 2 seasons, because it did feel to me like, I know a lot of stuff happened to her this last season, but it felt like uncharacteristic how quick it went from like she had it in her to just out and out nuts. And then in the last episode to go back to being a little bit like sane. Yeah.
I mean, this is like, I'm not angry at it. This is the thing. I'm not disappointed or anything like that. Like, I did enjoy watching it, and it's not gonna detract from the like all the great stuff that happened the fucking however many episodes previous. But what do you think about like the actual like public outcry over this sort of thing?
Well, well, anyone that follows me on Twitter might have an idea, but that's at Sinatra the Tank, or at Filmageddon Quiz is basically Adam. So I don't know. I really I've been fine with shows with big fan bases, and whether I'm a part of it or against it. I love shows like Breaking Bad, and seeing that sort of that interaction with fans, like the day after a show premieres, you have to try to avoid the internet. Then you get on there and everybody's got their theories and thoughts and their opinions. And to me, I like that sort of that quadrant of the fandom for shows like this. But the reaction to this season of Game of Thrones has really sort of shine a really negative light for me into that sort of fandom. And I'm sure I've been guilty of it many times in the past, but the sense of entitlement that people in the world seem to have over this show, like, is sort of second to none. Like, people are going, they're signing petitions. Like, 1 million people have signed a petition, have HBO remake the last season of this show. Like, where do these people get off? Like, people do these fun, stupid petitions all the time. But, like, the amount of like venom coming out of people, and these are people without like a fucking creative bone in their body, who like have no idea probably like the amount of effort that it must take, and the amount of stress probably as well, to try to wrap up a global phenomenon like that John Travolta movie, Phenomenon. Trying to wrap up something that big, that epic, and trying to please as many people as you can. And we all know, like, you'll never please everybody. Everybody's got different opinions, but I just hate them. Every time I read something, people I don't know, I want to attack them on Twitter. I don't for the most part, but I get into it a bit. What about you guys?
Yeah, Adam, obviously you haven't watched much of it. Has the outcry sort of influenced whether or not you would, think about actually watching it? Or
no, I'll never watch it. I'll never watch it, and that's fine. I don't really give a shit, but it's very interesting when you think about, say, seasons that got cancelled. This seems to have been going on for so long, and it's such a big cast that you've got to think about. I mean, and that's the thing. The people who are making these stupid petitions aren't thinking about is that the amount of fucking money and effort it goes into making just one season of this. Yeah. And the amount of time it must take all of these actors. Now, look at some of these actors. Okay, some of them might be older. There might be, I think, Jerome from Robson and Jerome's in it at some point. Sean Bean making his one appearance or whatever, one season or 2 seasons, whatever appearance he was in it. Like, that's not much. That's not much for him. But for some of these, say, young actors like Maisie Williams or whatever, who's like, she's what, in her early 20s, she must be getting offered like, okay, we'd love you to be in this part, and she's like, I can't do it. Why? Game of Thrones. I'm sure she loves it, but you've got to think about all these actors. It must free up so much more of their time when the star is so big to be able to go and make whatever they want to make now, and at least say yes to probably a lot more things and not being tied down to a series. I just think the people who are making these things, like you said, Frank, they're probably not as creative people, but they're obviously in love with these characters, and they want them to just please keep making them. It's like, mate, like, we've all got lives, we're not characters. We move on from that. It's very interesting if you think about how certain series got cancelled maybe before its time. Look at Firefly. That was cancelled way before its time. The amount of people would petition, but their petition was always, please keep making more. Please keep making more. And yeah, it falls on deaf ears, or they make a movie out of it, and then they make, like, a few comic books out of it. Or, in the case of like something like Community, please keep making more, 6 seasons in a movie, and then it gets the power to move to another network. But that comes from a very honest thing of people who are genuinely in love with characters, genuinely in love with the writing, and just want to be able to see more of it. And I don't blame anyone for wanting to see more, but to be like, no, you've done it wrong. It's like, mate, yeah. you ain't making it. And if you want to make it, there's websites where you can write fan fiction. It can end exactly how you want it to end. If you want to see
Garfield,
Grey Worm, and Garfield versus
yes,
Odie.
I'm almost there.
Gendry or Bronn. You can see. Oh wait, Jerome Flynn is Bronn. Okay, and you can see them fight, and then Jilly can fly down on the back of Lord Varys, and you can have whatever you want, but the amount
you're going too fast. I'm trying to write all this down.
Okay, and then Lord Varys, he opens his chest up, and his chest not his physical chest. I mean, no, an actual physical chest, and it's got a secret inside, and no one knows what the secret is.
You're pretty close,
and it's called. I can't tell you, it's a secret.
Herpes.
Also, the fact that, like, okay, so from what I understand, there's going to be prequels to this, and I guess that maybe they've had discussions about that. Maybe they've not kicked it all off. But speaking to you, Blair, especially when we went to Belfast a few weeks ago, seeing how much industry and how many jobs it brought to the area of Belfast, it's in their best interest to keep that ball running, and it's kind of a little bit like J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter. It's like you finished all the books, you finished all the films. How can we keep the ball? Let's just keep it rolling. Now we've got a different series, and it might not be as good. Now we've got a play. No, they're going to give it a few more years, and I imagine they'll probably do like a movie of like The Cursed Child or whatever when everyone's sort of star has gone down. Do you guys think then that, before I sort of finish my thing, is like, there's going to be prequels to it, but I could imagine in the future, is there room enough for a sequel? And would the people who petition for that kind of shit to be like, please change how it's supposed to be? I didn't do that at the fucking end of, like, I don't know, X-Men 3, or you you fucked it. I'm gonna write something to somebody.
Yeah.
And it's because it became so. And to be fair as well, it's such a more an interconnected world than when the series first started. So it's anybody can make a petition, and also anybody who's writing a blog or a newspaper or a shitty like magazine can easily just go, wait, somebody's writing that. People are going to either get really angry that someone's setting up a petition, or they're not going to give a flying fuck, or they're going to agree with it. I'll write a little article about that, and it's winding everybody up, and because it's so easy to do all this. Is there enough room at the end of this for, in 5 years' time, there to be a Game of Thrones prequel? Sorry, sequel.
Both. This is. I think this is the sort of problem with it. It is that it's so open ended because it's such a big world and it doesn't follow only a few people. You know, it has such a large cast that you could make definitely sequels, prequels, fucking alternate universes, Spider-Verses. Like you could have everything. Like you could have one where everyone's a dragon. You know, you could have one where
I'd watch that.
Oh, or they all have to be the animals of their houses. Do you know what I mean?
Or they're all Natalie Dortmer.
Oh yeah,
I would watch that one, please. Yeah, well, it's got that like that Star Wars, Lord of the Rings potential of like they could do whatever they want with this and they'll make money because of how big this thing's gone. So, yeah, they're doing a prequel, whatever. They're gonna shoot a pilot for that like this month or next month. They're saying they don't want to do a sequel at the minute. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to watch Arya's show. I want a spin-off where we follow her. It's like, no, you don't want that. And luckily, like, HBO's sort of said, like, yeah, we want... The story at the minute is HBO's president has said, look, we want Game of Thrones to be its own thing. The prequels and other spin-offs or whatever that they've got in development, they want to set so far apart from it that they're their own things, which I agree is, like, sort of the way to go. Just going off of like previous examples of shows, like an idea of a prequel to this show for me right off the bat doesn't work because my thing with prequels is always like, where's the threat? Like I know what's gonna happen down the line, so I know like shit can't really hit the fan here. But then as like I was sort of talking to Blair about, like it's the same thing with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, because when the idea of a prequel to Breaking Bad following Saul Goodman's character, when that hit the internet, I was just like, why do we need this? That's just gonna taint what already exists.
Yeah.
And now that show's in its 5th season coming up, and I think it might be better than Breaking Bad was at that same time in its run, and it's one of my favorite shows. So I'll change my tune, like. One episode into the Game of Thrones prequel, and I'll say, "Oh my God, let's have a movie. Let's find out what Arya's up to on her boat. Where's Drogon off to? He just flew off on an adventure. Yeah. Let's see what he's up to."
He meets up with a plucky donkey that is.
I don't like where you're going with this. You know what? There's no ogres in Game of Thrones. There are giants, but fine. No ogres.
That's good. Good. That's probably why I like it.
I'd be interested. Okay, now you've got my attention. So
wait a second. There's a small person in Game of Thrones,
yes,
who's sort of a lord. There's definitely a princess. I've seen some donkeys. There is a dragon. Not so many gingerbread men, but Hot Pie, he makes biscuits that look like wolves.
Okay.
I hate this. I hate where this
Shrek verse confirmed. Oh my God.
Does Peter Dinklage live? Like, what's this?
Yeah.
What happens to him? Oh,
does he live?
He figures it out. He's basically the guy at the end that goes, "All right, lads. So at the end, basically they get all the main characters that are still left, and they sit them in a semicircle, and Peter Dinklage goes up to them and goes, "All right, lads. So we've been fighting for about 7 series now. How about we just give it to the little lad?" And they all go, there's a bit more fucking about than that, but essentially he sort of dictates what happens, and then they all go, yeah, okay, and then they have their little meetings, and he says something about prostitutes or something, and then that's it. Yeah, so he could survive. He did survive.
Yeah.
But I suppose just to wrap it up, since I mean we can talk all about what was good and what wasn't. I think an interesting theory, or like what a lot of what people aren't talking about, is like what's next for like a lot of the actors that have made their names in Game of Thrones. Like, because a lot of actors have gone from, you know, nobodies. I mean, children, in fairness, to like worldwide superstars. So I don't know if any of you guys have any opinions on which ones will, you know, do well, or which ones we will never ever see again.
It's a who's hot and who's not list.
Yep.
Well, I mean, Adam, I throw the question to you. As such a big fan of this show,
Well-
which actors do you think are really going places?
Okay, so from the people I know, it's very strange though, because there's people who like say Kit Harington, who was like, wasn't he in Spooks movie? He was in a Spooks movie that released, and I thought that was supposed to be him kind of kickstarting, like, yeah, I'm a leading man. But the thing is, he looks like someone I could beat up, so I don't think he's much of an action sort of lead.
Got a high opinion of yourself, don't you?
He is really short. I mean, not really
Exactly.
short. But
There's at least two people in this list I could beat up. But I don't know. Like I watch old TV for a living, and I remember seeing Lena Headey, whatever.
Yeah.
She was an officer in The Bill, and I remember seeing her, I was like, oh shit, it's her. She's in loads of things, and then apparently she's in Game of Thrones as well. But I think like she's one of those people who's done like movies outside of it while Game of Thrones has been going on. But then again, it's still not been, you know, a list kind of thing. Yeah, I think she was recently in that film by The Rock about wrestling. So like, you know, it's like, oh, that's a part, but she's also technically on the same level as Nick Frost. You know, and that's kind of pathetic.
She was in Dread.
Well, I mean, that's good for her.
There you go.
But she's an older actor now, so it's kind of, or, you know, she's not old as shit, but like she's one of the older people, a mum
45.
mum age now. So you'd like to think that she's probably,
attractive mum.
She's going to be around for ages, I imagine. She's going to be doing like so much like little bit parts that she'll never be out of work. But obviously, like people like fucking Sophie Turner, who's obviously it's funny that she's in Game of Thrones and is in X-Men. And it's like her star, and then like she's going out with a Jonas, I think. So like her star is gonna keep rising and rising, and then like wasn't Emilia Clarke in like Terminator shit or whatever? So yeah. Obviously, those like her, like Sophie Turner, Emilia Clarke, and Maisie Williams are probably gonna do the best out of all of them, from what I know of people. But yeah, what do you guys think? What do you think?
I think that's fair. I think Sophie Turner is gonna ride that sort of what do you call her? Holy fuck, I've got her name. Yeah, the wave, but like that sort of Jennifer Lawrence style wave. Do you know what I mean? Because she's really relatable online, and she's not like, girls are very like drawn to her because she's, you know, honest about things, and she's not like she's obviously attractive, but she's not like stupidly attractive. Like she'll get those sort of roles that it seems that people like. I think Emilia Clarke might actually struggle because, like, she's gonna be offered like the roles where it's just like, right, you have to be like the really hot girl. Do you know what I mean? Like things like the Terminator, you know, she's gonna be offered things like shitty fourth in the series sort of things, unless she gets something, you know, really big.
That's what Sophie Turner's getting at the minute, though. She's getting like, hey, would you like to come and be in the 8th X-Men movie playing a character that like 2 other actresses have played?
Yeah, but it's still like a... Well, do you think the new X-Men is bigger than the Terminator Genesis when it came out? Maybe not, actually.
I think probably it's a bit... And well, now it's part of Disney, it'll be a bit bigger, I guess.
Yeah, but they're gonna... Yeah, I don't know. I think... Personally, I think Sophie Turner doesn't have a big future ahead of her. I think she'll be doing stuff for the next few years, but just based on... I don't really think she's that good of an actress. I mean, she might, like, yeah, I guess, like, her online and her personality, like, her presence there is, like, one appealing thing, but I don't think she's got, like, the capabilities of a Jennifer Lawrence or something. And, I mean, I'd sort of say the same about Emilia Clarke. Like, they're very... I think they could play these characters in Game of Thrones, and they play them well, but I've yet to see anything from either of them outside of that, and I know that it's a small selection of work, but there have been some examples of it. I definitely don't think either of them could carry anything on their own. They're very much like, Emilia Clarke needs Arnold Schwarzenegger to headline to be in a movie, and Sophie Turner needs fucking You Killed Me Mother to what's his face Fassbender. Yeah, he needs to do it. I think it's really going to hopefully shine the light a bit more on those older actors who have been more bit players, who actually showed that they can act a bit more. I mean, like, where did you see, like, Rory McCann before Game of Thrones? It was like, all right, he played the doofus in Hot Fuzz, who could just say yarp. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh no, wait, he's a fucking great actor. I didn't know until I started watching the behind the scenes stuff this season that wasn't even his real accent either.
Yeah. It's strange that a lot of them have been made to do other accents that aren't like Davos. What the fuck's his name?
That meeting place in Brazil.
Liam Cunningham. Is actually, he's from Dublin, but they give him a Geordie accent. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's quite a lot of that, like, just subtle. Well, not really subtle, but in the global scheme of things, it's subtle. Like, it's like, strange that a lot of them do that.
Someone like Ian Glenn, who played Jorah, he was somebody who was doing, like, bit parts in Resident Evil movies beforehand.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, this is his career, right? This is as far as it goes. But now Game of Thrones shines a different light on him, and hopefully he'll be able to be a bit more multi-dimensional in his acting roles. And, like, he's not going to be a leading man, but I reckon he'll get picked up a lot more for parts. Someone like Aidan Gillen. I mean, he's done quite a bit, but again, before Game of Thrones, was he a household name? No, not really.
He's just Mayor Carcetti from The Wire.
There you go.
So what about
Gingerbeard? He could do stuff.
I was just gonna say that, but he's got some mad Scandinavian name, doesn't he?
Christopher.
Yeah, I bet he'll do something. He'll do one of them moody, those Scandinavian murder mysteries where everything's in the snow, and he'll do one of those soon. And then I bet. What do you think? What's Bran's name?
Isaac Hampstead.
Real English.
Posh.
Yes, there you go. I think he'll end up on a bit of a like Stranger Things kids.
He'll be dead. He'll be dead in about 8 years. That's my gamble.
I don't think that.
Holy moly! What about old who shined special light? What about the old Charles Dance? He's not been in the show for a while, but he should make a comeback. He needs to be in more stuff. He's great.
Yeah, I think he could.
A lot of the old guys who've been killed off already, like some of them could do it. Hey, what about Mark Addy? Old Fred Flintstone himself.
They could revamp the Fred Flintstone universe, the Flintstone verse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now
Get
we're
John Goodman.
Hey, now you're an all-star.
I can see them like making like something, or you can imagine stuff with like, say, like Maisie Williams and Sophie Turner doing one of those, more like an indie film kind of like. Too young. I can imagine them being paired up together for a film, because it's now, because there's so many actors that that people have loved seeing together. Apparently, that or there might have been times when you're watching a show and you're like, this person never really got to interact with this person. So if I was casting a film, I'd be like, well, people loved Game of Thrones, so what I'll do is just cast these two people, and we're guaranteed a certain amount of the audience are gonna be in there, because we get them on chat shows and everything like that. So from a marketing standpoint,
there's some of that going on already. I think there's like a couple of straight to DVD films that had like old Jamie Lannister and who's the Carice Van Houten.
Oh yeah,
like they were both in a movie together, and it's like, I know what you're doing here, and it's working.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, and I'm going to watch it.
It's interesting. It'll be very interesting to see how people's careers go or don't go after Game of Thrones. I think there needs to be a cool down period for anyone. Like, if I see a trailer starring any of the main cast, I'm just gonna be like, whoa, Okay, I'm not ready for this yet. I'm still saying goodbye to the characters. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what happens. It's the end of an interesting and long and fulfilling journey, I would say. It's had its ups and its downs, but which TV show doesn't?
Before we sort of wrap it up, do you guys think that the way that this show has it started, 2011, but TV has changed so much since then. Do you think there will ever be another show that has this kind of worldwide, everyone, Australians being able to get it quicker than this, and this person torrenting that, it was that highest torrented show in the world? Do you think that there will be a film, because we're all kind of tastes not changing, if I want to watch, everyone's competing for your eyes, and if I don't want to watch that kind of show, I can just go and fill my time with something completely different. Do you think there'll be another show that has the general public, in love with it as much?
I'll be honest, I don't think so, because I think it hit the sweet spot of sort of similar to Breaking Bad. Like, if Breaking Bad came out 5 years later, it would have been right in the prime of basically social media, and I think social media is what's created this narrative of how shit this last series has been. I know of Game of Thrones, sorry. I know it hasn't been good, but whenever it becomes memeified and it's hard to start anything in that, I think Game of Thrones started early enough that it laid down all the groundwork before every dork was making a meme. So there was a backbone already, or a foundation. So I think it's harder now. There's things like Ozark. I watched 2 episodes of Ozark, and it could very well be the best thing ever. But there's 10 other things. There's Chernobyl. There's all this other shit.
Yeah.
But I think it got, in my opinion, it got right at the peak time for it. It sort of peaked along. It ended right at the peak of saying peak a lot. Social media.
What about a show about a mountain? That would have a peak. Yeah.
The Mountain. He was a character.
He's a character, yeah! To answer your question, Adam, I think it's possible. I think we're a few years away. I don't think it's going to come right off the back of it, but if you look back at television history since, whatever, the 50s or something, there is a pattern of shows that they have such a massive cultural relevance that everyone's talking about it, even in the days of fucking telephones. That's why the water cooler conversations were a thing. That's why people would come into work on Mondays and talk about what show they watched. And throughout history, that stuff's been there. MASH was the most watched season finale, most watched episode of a TV show for however many years. Maybe it still is. I don't even know. Shows like Seinfeld, where the series finale of Seinfeld was shown live in Times Square. It's not every year. It's not every 5 years, but it does come along. When Breaking Bad finished, I didn't think there'd be another Breaking Bad. That level of show where it was that thing. All right, wake up, don't go on social media, nobody tell me anything, or I'm going to stay up till 2 a.m. I'm going to watch it. So, and I think potentially social media could help that. There's going to be, as Blair said, there's so much competition out there. I mean, look at 3 years ago, Stranger Things was on the cusp of maybe becoming another Game of Thrones, and then it didn't have a strong second season. There was the wait between seasons was quite long, but I think there was as big a reaction to the first season of that show as there was to maybe the first season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So I just think it'll need to find something new, something that probably we have not seen. Before Game of Thrones, if you saw fucking knights and wizards and dragons on TV, you're more likely to think of Xena or Hercules and some show like that. Whereas now they've just shown the trailer off the back of this season of Game of Thrones for the new season of Westworld, which looks completely different from the other 2 seasons, which looks almost like a new show. Or there's Watchmen coming out, that's a show that doesn't seem like it would grab the populace, but that's also what Game of Thrones didn't seem like. It didn't seem like normal people would want to watch knights and sword fighting and dragons and all that. And then it just sucks people in. More people talk about it. That spreads, and everyone likes it. And I don't care. I'm off on a tangent. Ugh.
So you had fun though, didn't you?
I did.
These past 8 years of your life.
10 years, 9 years, 8 years. I don't even know. Did you know? Here's a bit of trivia. I didn't know this. I'm just learning it now. How old is Maisie Williams?
23.
Okay, you're both looking at it.
I'm not.
How old is Sophie Turner?
24. 23.
26.
Okay, Blair was the closest. Maisie Williams is 22 and Sophie Turner's 23. You know, it'd be good to also hear what you listeners thought of it, and I'm sure you guys have probably already put your thoughts online because that's what everybody in the world is doing, social media and all that. So you should make sure to follow us on social media, which I said earlier, but do it. It's at Filmageddon Quiz on Twitter, and we've got an Instagram too, don't we, Adam?
Yes, it's Filmageddon.
There you go. And yeah, you can follow those. There's a lot of good stuff going up there. There's a great social media team behind the scenes. It's a team of one. It's like a wrestler.
There's two. I think Blur does sometimes.
Yep.
Hey, there's three. You dick.
You've been out of the country. You've been busy watching Game of Tennis, which is like Game of Thrones. There are characters, the suspense, and there's only one winner at the end of the day.
There's a tennis player called Tonus. It's a callback, is what that was. All right, but guys, next week we'll be going back to normal business and talking films. All this television talk has given me a headache and a sore throat.
Oh.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But Adam and Blair, thank you guys very much for indulging in a little Game of Thrones talk. Adam, I know that it was easy for you as it's, one of your top shows of all time.
It's the least I've ever talked, which is probably for the best. But yeah, no, it was enjoyable, and I'm just glad. You know what? I say it every time there's something shit and like a film that we're like that was dog shit. It same applies to a series I've not watched. As long as everybody had fun, then that's all that matters. And if you wrote a petition to say that you wanted the ending changed of a show that I've never watched, you are a fucking dweeb. And if we ever do a quiz, don't
rabble.
Yes.
Here.
Carrying on from the dweeb talk, I agree. If I ever see anyone sign a petition for anything that is to do with film or media, I think you should stand on a landmine. And that's me signing off.
And I would just like to say, if you'd like to see the Filmageddon Film Quiz return, you can start a petition on change.org. And if we get enough traction, it will come back. It will come back. I'm saying that again. It will come back. Well, thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, or thereabouts. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Filmageddon podcast. Make sure you subscribe to it. Give us a rating. That always helps as well. And until next time, we will see you later.